Welcome to Apologetics and Prophecy, the official podcast of Calvary Solid Ground, a remnant church in Orangevale, California. I am Pastor Jed, and I will be your host as we bring you Bible studies and updates put through an apologetical and biblical lens to see just how close we are to the return of our Lord. Thank you for joining us today. Maranatha, everyone. So glad that you could join us again for this edition of Apologetics and Prophecy, where we want to welcome you today and thank you for tuning in with us. And we're about ready to do a prophecy update, but I just want to remind you, in case you didn't know or you missed it, last Saturday we had our first prophecy conference of the year, the Apologetics and Prophecy, where we had our good friend Kurt Reed and Lee Brainerd with us. And those sessions, including the Q&A and the Sunday morning message that Lee did, are all available on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, Rumble channel, and of course our app and website. You can find out more information at our website at calvarysolidground.com. But please like, share, subscribe, send those things out. And it was a real blessing, especially Kurt Reed. He did some pretty extensive teaching on the truth about the giants and, of course, truth about the ark and the city of Sodom. And so pretty good stuff and some great exhortation abounded that whole Saturday. And so we're very thankful that they could join us. So let's just continue to pray for them, especially for Lee as he travels. But make use of those resources that we have available for you. But today, our prophecy update theme, of course, is the beginning of sorrows. There's been a lot of talk from evangelicalism, and especially from people that are more into the NARS world, thinking that President Trump is a reprieve or a slowdown or as we would say, a step back from the contractions of the tribulation period that we've seen. And we're going to ask ourselves, is that true? And what are we referring to for some of you that might not know? But when Jesus began the Sermon of the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24, he said, verses 4 through 8 said, "And Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." And so this is what I refer to in my teaching when I teach through this, the signs for all the times. This is not referring to the tribulation period. This is the run up to the tribulation period, as Jesus is telling them, that one of the false teachings that entered the church, especially in Thessalonica early on, that caused Paul to write 2 Thessalonians, is that people were going around telling them, because of all the things that were going on, that they were in the tribulation period. And so Jesus is saying, hey, no, you're going to see these things happen, but let no one deceive you, because they're only the beginning of sorrows. But the interesting thing is that word used for sorrows, it actually is the word for birth pangs. And we know that those of us in the dispensational camp that believe in a pre-tribulational rapture, see the setup for the tribulation period, understand what those birth pangs are, because Paul tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3, it says, when they say, the unbelieving world, peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, what? As labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. And what are labor pains? They're contractions that as they get closer and closer together, guess what? The baby's going to come. The baby, in this case, in this idea, this idiom, is the tribulation period, or as in Paul as referring it to as the day of the Lord. And these are things that we learned about at the conference, timelines and stuff like that, And so we understand these things because we take the Bible in its historical, literal, and grammatical context. And so we believe in a pre-tribulational rapture, but we see these things, the signs for all the times, getting closer to that period by the contractions that are getting closer and closer together. So do we see a lot of birth pangs? Do we we see wars and rumors of wars? Do we see earthquakes? Do we see? I think we do. And the thing about wars and rumors of wars, they've really notched it up to a higher level lately, especially with Iran and everything happening in the Middle East. And so, of course, we saw this story. Next round of Iran-U.S. nuclear talks postponed. And this is one of those act like you're surprised stories, because what Iran is doing is dragging their feet. That's what they do. Their idea of diplomacy is push it for as long as it can so we can acquire a nuclear weapon. And of course, it says a fourth round of Iran-U.S. talks over Tehran's nuclear program has been postponed. Iran says the two countries, along with facilitators Oman, have jointly decided to postpone Saturday's meeting in Rome for logistical and technical reasons. The U.S. said the timing of the talks has not been confirmed in the first place. It came as U.S. President Donald Trump threatened actions against those buying Iranian oil or petrochemicals on Thursday after Washington introduced fresh sanctions this week on companies it said had links to Tehran. Trump pulled the U.S. out of the previous nuclear agreement between Iran and 5 other world powers in 2018 and has long said he would make a better deal. It was actually before 2018. I think it was 2017 when he first came into office. But anyway, we know that these are just pushing off the inevitable, and it's exactly that. Are we going to strike Iran? It's a rumor. We don't know. And it's very interesting. And then, of course, we understand that we're right now struggling with this. We've been bombing the Houthis. We've been, using a lot of military, but it doesn't seem to be slowing them down that much. But we discovered this. Gatestone Institute came out this week, found out China helping the Houthis attack U.S. Navy vessels. The more that we're seeing more and more rumors of war to the point where they're just constant every day. China's regime, despite repeated warnings from Washington, is helping the Yemen-based militia try to kill American sailors. Providing satellite data that is being used to identify U.S. and other ships in the Red Sea for missile strikes appears to be part of a deal between Beijing and the Houthis that would end attacks on Chinese shipping. Now, this, of course, is very interesting because, Houthis are tied to the Iranians. This is all part of this whole thing. And China is, dependent upon Iranian oil and Russian oil. So this is part of their whole, the way they work. President Donald Trump should evoke the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917 and end trade and investments with China. China's regime, by its action and its words, is America's enemy. We have to stop China before they sink an American ship. This retired Air Force Brigadier General said to Gatestone in April of 2025. So we see these things going on. And then, of course, what do we see happening in India and in Pakistan? We see this right here. India and Pakistan trade gunfire and build up militias after Kashmir terror attack. So we're seeing, this every news story of every hour is that they're getting ready to start this war. And it's, again, a rumor of war. It's almost like Jesus knew the future. When he told us what it would be like in the last days before the day of the Lord. And it says that India and Pakistan trade gunfire and build up militaries after Kashmir terror attack. Tensions between historic nuclear-armed enemies, India and Pakistan, are soaring. With Western officials closely watching amid fears, they are barreling towards a new war along the border. The United Nations is desperately urging maximum restraint. Indian officials have confirmed Friday that Indian and Pakistani soldiers briefly exchanged fire along their highly militarized frontier in the disputed Himalayan region of Kashmir, according to the Associated Press. Small arms were used by both sides in a gunfight. No casualties have yet been reported. A briefing and an Indian official reported it is the such live fire incident since 2021. It also violates a pledge from the same year for the two nations to observe a ceasefire along the disputed line of control between Indian and Pakistani controlled areas of Kashmir. Widely circulating videos suggest that India has been rushing troops and military equipment to the border in readiness for potential escalation of any scenario. And of course, we know that that Iran, of course, I didn't have that story, the big explosion in their port, which of course nobody is taking responsibility for that, but it doesn't take a rocket science to figure it out. So, but anyway, we just see these continued skirmishes, and we understand and know when we read, the difference between Matthew 24, 4 through 8, and Revelation 6, 1 through 4 is drastically different. Jesus is warning the signs for all the times leading up to the tribulation period that many false Christs will come. Well, in the tribulation period, one false Christ will come, the Antichrist. It says there'll be rumors of wars and skirmishes. We know that in the book of Revelation, in the second seal, war will break out. There won't be a rumor. It will happen. So you can see the differences there. So we continue to see this march up to the tribulation period, to the day of the Lord, by all this rhetoric and rumors of war. And what do we see? Just, yesterday we had our Secretary of Defense make this post that says, "Message to Iran. We see your lethal support to the Houthis. We know exactly what you are doing. You know very well that the U.S. military is capable of, and you were warned. You will pay the consequence at the time and place of our choosing." So it doesn't look like peace and safety to me. I think sudden destruction is coming. Just shows you how close we are. And of course, about all these, of course, I didn't have time to post that, since the last update that we did, we had two major earthquakes over 7.0, one in Istanbul and one just today way down in Argentina, down near the Antarctica, and to tsunami warning and all this stuff. And we're not talking about months or years in between. We're talking weeks in between two major earthquakes. So these things are happening, and those are various places. It's almost like I said, almost like Jesus knew the future, right? And so we also had this on Israel's anniversary just this last week. There was this: Israel declares national emergency as wildfires force evacuation. We see these things increase. Pestilence, natural disasters, earthquakes, all of these things. This is what this idiom of all these things is talking about: worldwide things like this becoming unprecedented. The worst in history. That's what we've been hearing for the last 3-4 years. Ever since the pandemic, it hasn't slowed down. Every hurricane is the worst in history. Every summer is the hottest in history. Every big storm is the worst in history. It's unprecedented, and that's what we hear, right? That's the same language, and it's almost putting what Jesus said into our modern vernacular is exactly what we're seeing. And it says Israel declares national emergency as wildfires force evacuations. Witnesses tell of walls of flame surging across woodland while high winds disrupt Independence Day events. Wildfires continue to threaten swaths of forest and fields in Israel on Thursday, though firefighters successfully reopened the main road linking the country's two principal cities. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, declared a national emergency after the fires broke out on Wednesday along the main Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway, prompting police to shut the route and evacuate thousands of people from nearby communities. Hundreds were forced from their homes about 19 miles west of Jerusalem, and Israel's most watched television network, Channel 12, had to break off from broadcasting via its studio about 10 miles from the city during a news bulletin. High winds that have fanned the flames led to the cancellation of many events celebrating Israel's foundation in 1948. A pre-recorded rehearsal of a torch lighting ceremony was screened instead of the planned event. The Times of Israel newspaper described a surreal, fraught evening in which Israel is starting to mark its 77th Independence Day while firefighters battle some of the worst wildfires in history. Unprecedented. And so, but interesting is that Israel using AI, which is really interesting. And they put out this video marking their 77th anniversary. And I want you to pay attention to it at the end, because it's showing us something that fits the biblical narrative. And so let's watch this real quick.
From our very first journey, hope was our guiding light. From slavery to freedom, we entered the Promised Land with the hope of inspiring a better world. We worked the soil, brought it to life, and established roots, communities, and traditions as a nation. And then they came, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, forcing us to leave our homes, our dreams, dispersing us to the four corners of the earth. Many of us remained, hoping and waiting, more than 2,000 years for the return. We continued to pursue our mission, contributing to the world. Yes, we encountered strife, but we never succumbed and held on to our identity, our ideals, and the hope of returning to our Promised Land. So, when hope whispered, "It's time to return," and the winds gathered us from the four corners of the earth, we came home. And the whisper became a song, and the song became an anthem, and the anthem a declaration of hope and peace shared with our neighbors and the world. There were moments, terrible moments, when it seemed like history could repeat itself. But we overcame the challenges. We are still missing some of our parts, but we will triumph. For we are a nation that builds bridges, bridges of hope. Again and again, against all odds. We are the people of Israel, a people of hope.
You can see their theme is bridges of hope. But did you notice when they used that term bridges and bridges of hope, the pictures that they were showing in AI was them shaking hands and making peace deals. And so that is very prophetic, because we know that the beginning of the 70th week of Daniel will begin with them making a peace deal. When they say peace and safety, that sudden destruction will come, because with the shake of a hand, giving their allegiance to the Antichrist, who will promise them peace for 7 years, will bring about swift destruction upon the world, and of course the abomination of desolation in the middle of the week. So it's very interesting. We have to understand that Israel is there. All of the stuff that's been happening in Israel recently is all a setup. It's a constant contraction that's leading them to be open as a bridge of hope, whatever they can do to bring peace. They're hungry for peace. They're suffering PTSD and OTSD, which is ongoing traumatic stress disorder, because of the wars, because of the anti-Semitism across the world, because of natural disasters. All these things that Jesus talked about are prepping them, and we see it even in their own productions that they're putting out. Bridges to hope. That's what they're hoping for. There will be a bridge, but it's not going to lead to hope. It's going to lead to death and destruction, and one more trial that will bring about the tribulation period. And of course, Jesus told us to warn us of false prophets. And of course, this story shouldn't surprise us. Just the day before Easter, we have our vice president meeting with he called him the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and he was grateful for his invitation to meet and pray for his good health. Well, were those prayers answered? Nope. It said, who is the conclave? The Vatican sets date to elect new head after Pope Francis's death. So the day after, our vice president is praying for the Holy Father for long health. He succumbed to his illnesses, which we won't get into. Were probably because of all the vaccine stuff that he pushed. But this day, they will have to hire a new pope. Will the next one be another runner-up for the false prophet like this last one? But Jesus said, many will come in his name. Many false prophets will come. Not just the Antichrist is coming, but many Antichrists come. So it doesn't matter whether he's conservative or liberal. The whole system is shot. You have to understand it's a works-based system. These people are not saved because they're placing their faith and trust in the Pope and their works and for salvation. And so the whole system needs to be replaced. And that's what the whole Reformation was about. And unfortunately, it's still people. But this article goes on to say, with the death and funeral of Pope Francis comes the start of a sacred process of determining a successor that dates back many centuries. The papal conclave is private election held behind closed doors of Vatican City's Sistine Chapel, where 135 cardinals vote on who will serve as the next head of the Catholic Church. There you go. You know, the church is not a democracy. You know, Paul never went into a town and said, hey, can you guys vote for the next elder? No, he's the one who placed the elders in the church. The church was never meant to be a democracy. You didn't vote for the next pastor. Churches that vote for pastors, what happens when the pastor says something you don't like? You just vote him out. And you get a yes man in there. That's the whole point. And so it shows you that, again, we have cardinals voting for this pope, and it's not even biblical. And the Vatican has revealed the date for when the Roman Catholic cardinals from across the globe will meet in Rome and begin its election process that has previously lasted from around 25 hours. And so it's supposed to be sometime in May, I guess. They're going this month. They're going to do it. So, but, you know, and there's also this guy that's being shown all over the internet. All the prophecy teachers are you know, sharing videos and links to this guy that says he's the Mahdi and the new pope. And, you know, I won't even give the guy a name or a time of day, because the more that you click on these guys' sites, the more recognition he's getting. And we're not going to do that here because he has a small following. Just because he's the guy, because of what he says, he's getting the interest of people in the prophecy world. You have to understand there are lots of these guys out there. There's guys down in South America and Colombia and places like that that say, in Mexico, that say they're Jesus, and they have 1 million followers, and we don't talk about them either, you know, but there's plenty of them around. And, you know, people talk about him being charismatic and the most charismatic guy that has ever been around. And I have to say, you know, I can remember the days of the Rajneesh. I don't know if you remember the Rajneesh, the orange people. I grew up in San Francisco, and they were everywhere. And this guy was, you know, he was a huckster from all the way. But, man, he got a lot. People worshiped this guy, gave him all their money, put on orange and wore his little face around their neck, and they were sold out for him. And now I think he's still doing time in federal prison. But, you know, it's pretty funny. But anyway, Pope Francis has now met his maker, and it's very unfortunate. If he was trusting in his works and believing in the Jesus that he was promoting, that was the same God that everybody worshipped, he is not having a pleasant time right now. So, but, you know, we're not going to pray for the next pope. You know, the only thing you can do is pray for Catholic people to come to know the real Jesus. You need to pray against this evil system, it's satanic system that's been set up to deceive people and lead them away from the true gospel. And that's a truth. That's a fact that we need to understand and know. That the Pope is nobody. The Pope is not the vicar of Christ. He is not called by God to lead people. And so we need to be very careful that we don't say stupid stuff like Franklin Graham, like, let's pray for the next Pope. No, let's pray against the whole system and share the gospel with these people because they're lost. And we need to remember that. And then, of course, we have this. IDF strikes near Damascus presidential palace, Syria, in a dangerous escalation. Now, just yesterday, there were protests all over Israel by the Druze community. They were getting violent, burning stuff down in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, and demanding that Israel protect because the Druze in Syria are having skirmishes against this new Al-Qaeda government of Syria. And so, but what's interesting is where they're bombing. And it says Netanyahu and Katz stated that the strike was a clear message that Israel would not allow any danger to the Druze community. The IDF conducted an airstrike in Damascus adjacent to the area of the palace of Ahmad Hussein al-Sarara in Damascus. Without specifying the target, the military confirmed early Friday morning. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz stated yesterday that would not allow any harm to happen to the Druze community, their offices announced in a joint statement. This is Damascus. Damascus, the Bible talks about Damascus being blown to pieces and ceased to being a city. So we keep your eye on it. But this whole thing happening in Syria, again, is another rumor of war that could blow up at any minute. And then, of course, the constant fight in Gaza with Hamas. And you got to love our new ambassador to Israel. He tells it like it is, like he does in this video.
Does go in, they steal it, exploit it, and make their people starve while they themselves live large. This is the tragedy of what's happened in Gaza. I don't blame Israel for that. I blame Hamas. They're the ones who overrun those borders on October the 7th and slaughtered and massacred and mutilated people. And they're the ones who continue to make it miserable, not just for the hostages. They make it miserable for their own population and steal the food from the mouths of the babies of Gaza themselves. I don't understand how people can be that vicious and cruel. But that's what everyone is having to deal with when it relates to Hamas.
So there you go. That's the truth. Finally, somebody that's in our office that's actually telling the truth about why Israel is not bringing food into Gaza. And it's just more lies. And remember, Jesus said, do not be deceived. Deception would mark one of the contractions that lead, the beginning of sorrows that lead to the tribulation period. And then we also have lots of global chaos. And in Luke's gospel, he talks about people in fear of the things coming upon the whole earth. And we see that starting to build up in a contraction too with this one. And of course, this is all part of the deception and the lie. We had a huge I think it was a cyber attack, blackout in Spain and Portugal this week. But of course, they keep bringing this up. And it's very interesting because it reveals something to us that we didn't know. But now they're using it as an excuse for the blackout, which is, did a hole in the Earth's rapidly weakening magnetic field cause the electrical blackout in Spain and Portugal? And of course, this just came out yesterday. It says, without the Earth's magnetic field, our way of life could not exist. In fact, without it, life on our planet could not exist at all. The magnetosphere is essentially a shield that protects us from the charged particles from the sun that are constantly bombarding us. Unfortunately, that protective shield is steadily getting weaker. In fact, scientists tell us that every 10 years it's getting about 5% weaker. Needless to say, that has enormous implications for our future. In addition, the Earth's magnetic field is becoming more unstable, and there are many that are speculating that an episode of instability may have caused the electrical blackout that we just witnessed in Spain and Portugal. Officials openly admit they still don't know what exactly caused the blackout. We don't know. We have a pretty good clue, okay? But we are being told that it may have been caused by a phenomenon known as induced atmospheric vibration. Yeah. Well, they just come up with stuff, right? You ever watch if you ever listen, it was really noticeable in the Next Generation of Star Trek, where they would make up all these scientific terms that are just phony, like plasma discharged, photon torpedo stuff, and they're just making up names, and that's what's happening here. They're just making stuff up that we don't think that it was actually a cyber attack, right? The outage. It says preliminary reports out of Europe about the massive blackout that left millions powerless say the cause may have been something called induced atmospheric vibration, a rare phenomenon that we can't test, where weather changes affect power lines. We've never seen it happen before. All of a sudden, right? The outage was centered in Spain on Monday, where the lack of power caused widespread chaos. Renfe, Spain's national railroad company, said on social media the entire national grid was cut off at 12:30 local time. It brought parts of Spain and Portugal to a standstill, grounding planes, halting public transport, and forcing some hospitals to suspend routine operation. But don't worry, nothing to see here. Just, we went through a whole year of this last year. Barges turning and hitting bridges, and, cell phone towers going out and grids being affected. And we found later in the year, oh yeah, it was China. And they throw it in like the 5th page in the news in a little bottom column. Oh, that China had something to do with it, and and here we go again, the same thing. And here there's more of these rumors of wars and rumors of things and deception and lies. It continues on, including this. Dimming the sun, Air Force whistleblower breaks down chemtrail military cover-up. It's starting to come out that what was considered a conspiracy theory has been true all along. My wife and I were working out in our yard about a month ago. Beautiful, sunny, clear day. Not a cloud in the sky. Then all of a sudden, planes started going over, and all these crisscross trails. And the trails started to grow. They didn't fade away. They grew and became a cloud layer, and it started raining. It was like, okay, there was no rain in the forecast. Supposed to be my weather app said clear and sunny, but no, it was raining. And this cloud, and so, the idea that it's a big conspiracy theory, we witnessed it right before our eyes. But dimming the sun, Air Force whistleblower breaks down chemtrail military cover-up. If you say the word chemtrails to any government-trusting American citizen, you'll be painted as a nutty right-wing conspiracy theorist. However, there's good news for those who have been sounding the alarm. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has recently confirmed the use of chemtrails over America, and so has an Air Force whistleblower with an exposure scientist, Christian Megan, who's been making claims about a secret government chemtrail program for over a decade. Megan has worked in occupation, environmental safety, and health as a senior industrial hygienist and an exposure scientist for 23 years. For 9 of those years, she worked as active duty in the Air Force in a field called bioenvironmental engineering. So for people to understand, it's like the DOD equivalent of OSHA, EPA, DOT, Megan tells Sarah Gonzalez. So she goes on to explain all these things and whistleblow them. And of course, we know that the Lee Zeldin just came out against a company that, they have these companies that you can buy stock in and invest in that are openly spraying chemicals in the air to block the sun. Just a ridiculous. They have no clue what they're doing, and it's not going to end well if we continue to do that. But of course, they've been doing it for years, and they don't want to say it. And of course, we have more of the technology world happening here. Sam Altman's eye-scanning crypto project launches in the U.S. Yes, they came here to the U.S. now, and if you remember, Sam Altman's project that aims to scan the irises of every single person on Earth in exchange for cryptocurrency has made its debut in the U.S., even as concerns about biometric data collection remains remains. It's just this whole thing that even though Trump became president, this march towards these things have not slowed down. Don't think for a moment that all these things aren't coming. And we know there's great deception happening right now. Here's a good view of it. Just yesterday in the morning, news pops out like this: Trump ousts White House National Security Advisor Waltz and replaces him with Rubio. And so we have this summary. It says Waltz is the first big shakeup of Trump's inner circle. And so they're saying that they're saying all these things about Waltz leaving the White House, and that he was fired, and that it was because of all these problems in the Signal chat app. And to come to find out, it had nothing to do with that. It's almost as if Trump set the media up to show that they lie and deceive, because he made a post right out after that. I am pleased to announce that I'll be nominating Mike Waltz to be the next United States ambassador to the United Nations. In order to be an ambassador for the United Nations, he can't sit in another administration post. So he had to step down because he wanted to put him in a different position. And that's all it was. And even Mike Waltz came out and said, I'm deeply honored to continue my service to President Trump and our great nation. So it doesn't sound like he was fired to me. He's just being transferred to another post. And so, they continue this deception. And then, of course, what about, we need to be reminded of something that we've been told about that is still continuing to this day. And I'm going to show you an old video and then a newer video to show you that this stuff hasn't stopped. And let's just be reminded.
What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. We now see mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition? Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life. Humans are now hackable animals. The whole idea that humans have, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. I mean, all this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news.
Do you think that was going to stop? Do you think that those sorrows are not going to come back again? Do you think that contraction isn't going to continue? I mean, this next video I'm going to play for you is an ad for a company that does contracting with the U.S. military. And take a look at this guy. There isn't just Elon Musk. There isn't just Bezos. There isn't just the guy from Facebook, not Zuckerberg. There's a lot of these guys that are out here, and they are insane, crazy people that are utilizing the technology of the world to bring about a utopian dystopian world. So just watch this next video.
It's 2025. We're all kind of used to government surveillance. The idea that we're all being watched all the time and don't own our own personal data has become normalized. We're also used to the military spending vast amounts of our money on just a few giant defense contractors. But one tech company wants to change both of those things
and become the ultimate military contractor and the ultimate arbiter of all of our data.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
Check out Palantir shares surging 22% after the company cited a boom in demand for its AI software from the U.S. government.
We're doing it. We're doing it. And I'm sure you're enjoying this as much as I am.
I don't know about you, but I don't know if I want a guy with a bad haircut and a white T-shirt in charge of my data. But that's what we have. This is a real company. This is a real company that the government has contracts with. It is not made up. You look at that and you think, you think it's something off of a joke or a TV show, but these are the people that are in control of our data. And just the beginning of that video tells you that we've gotten used to, by 2025, we're just used to, no privacy at all. And that's where we live. And what about brain chips? People think that Elon Musk, you think Trump's in president, things have slowed down. I don't think so. Do you know that Elon Musk is not the only one with brain chips? What about China? China's brain chip project speeds up human trials after first success. All the countries of the world are getting ready to chip everybody's brain. I don't know, maybe right here. Or maybe, and the controller's on your right hand. I don't know. We'll have to see. But it says a tie up between a Chinese research institute and tech company said on Monday that it aims to implant its brain chip into 13 people by the end of this year in a move that could see it overtake Elon Musk's Neuralink in collecting patient data. Collecting data. Here we are again, right? They don't want it. They don't want control of just your data. They want control of your thoughts. How's the Antichrist going to know who's not worshiping him and who's not? Who's actually sincere? Start to think about these things, right? The Beijing-based Chinese Institute for Brain Research and New Cyber Neurotech has inserted Banioa #1, a semi-invasive wireless brain chip, into 3 patients in the last month and has 10 more lined up for this year. They're just lining up to get this brain chip. What about here? We have Elon Musk actually takes a surgery, but they have these new low-powered ones they could just slap right on the top of your head, like right on your forehead maybe. And they've got low-power brain chip, predicts users' intentions. And pretty scary stuff. Brain chip technology is quickly accelerating. Contractions getting closer. And it says the new design may give paralyzed people more autonomous motor control. It says in one of the latest advancements, researchers have designed a new chip that uses larger groups of neurons and less power to detect when a user wants to initiate a given behavior. For example, reaching for an object. The new approach, if it translates into humans, could theoretically provide users with more autonomy in initiating movement control. Implanted systems known as intracortical brain-computer interfaces, they even have their own acronym now, are a game changer for many people with paralysis. It always starts with we'll make the lame walk, remember? Providing them with means to regain some movement control. So these things are coming. It's not slowing down. The contractions are going closer together. But I want to leave you with one last story that gave me a great, huge laugh. And just kind of goes to show, we just did, I've been doing a study through the sermon in chapter 6 of Luke at our church. And of course, we just a few weeks ago did, out of the abundance of the mouth, the heart speaks. You can tell a lot about person, what they know about God and what's in their heart by what they say. And we just had a National Day of Prayer. And of course, we went downtown and we were in front of our state capitol with a group of Christians. And we prayed in our own little corner of the park down there, not with no news media, no big fanfare, but we prayed for our country. And we prayed to the God that we know and understand. But what about our president that a lot of people are saying is a Christian? Well, a Christian has some clue about who God is and about his nature. But here's a post from the Trump War Room that I found very interesting. And it says that faith is back in the White House. President real Donald Trump. This is going to be really 4 years of celebration. So get ready. And we are going to bring God with us. We're going to bring God to those celebrations. We're not going to forget about God. Almost like you could throw God in your back pocket and take it with you. This reminds me of the old bumper sticker, God is my co-pilot. Obviously produced it from somebody who does not understand God. You don't take God anywhere with you. He is everywhere at the same time. So this is, people want to talk about how much does Donald Trump know about God? Is he a Christian? This is the kind of foolish thinking and without knowledge about the true and the real biblical God that puts Paula White in charge of things like Christianity in the White House, because he doesn't really know God, because you don't just bring God with you wherever you go. God is already there. Now, we get in line with God's perfect will and timing. And so it just doesn't surprise me that we see more of this stuff. These are all beginning of sorrows. There are many other stories I could have brought up today, but you get the point. It's like one constant contraction right now that's leading to the birth of the baby, which will be the day of the Lord. And Jesus told us in Luke 21:28, now when these things begin to happen, when the contractions start to get to the birth, when the birth is about to come, look up and lift up your heads, because why? Your redemption draws near. Our redemption is closer today than it ever was before. Just because Donald Trump is in the White House does not mean that the day of the Lord isn't at hand, because it is. And we need to be ready, and we need to be looking up, because Jesus is coming back at an hour when we do not expect, at an hour at any moment. And so you need to be ready. You need to be prepared. And you need to understand that if you do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ, you are in a desperate spot of being thrust into a time period that the Bible speaks a lot about, that you do not want to be part of. You think these stories are just build-ups for what's really coming. War is coming. A deception upon this globe to worship one man is coming. A world with no privacy at all, where you cannot hide from the dystopian leader is coming. Death and famine and war is coming at a height that you can't even begin to imagine. Horrors that you cannot even begin to think in your mind are coming, but they're coming immediately after the evacuation of those that have placed their faith and trust in Christ. So you need to make sure that you have that handled today. Place your faith and trust in the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross for your sins, that he rose again from the dead, thereby showing us that God has accepted the sacrifice for our sins on our behalf. He has accepted it, and that the only way to salvation is through him, through a relationship with him, by placing your faith and trust in him. And for the rest of us, there should be an urgency in our message, an urgency in our life and living for Jesus Christ, because we want to finish well. And we understand that day is coming very soon. We understand it is the beginning of sorrows, and we need to be prepared and ready to meet our Lord in the air at any moment. And so we want to make sure that every person that we love and care about, every person that we know that doesn't know Jesus, that they have placed their faith and trust in him. Go send the message out. Get it out while you still can, and continue to look up, because your redemption draws near. So thank you for watching this edition of Apologetics and Prophecy. And as we always end, Maranatha. If you have been blessed by this podcast, please subscribe and share to help get the word out in these last days. If you'd like more information or to contact us, please go to calvarysolidground.com. God bless you, and see you next time on Apologetics and Prophecy.